That's the fullback, isn't it? Alex Walker. McLean and Heron from West Wales. Phillips, Walmsley, Graham, Thomas from Whitehaven, and Teenby from York. That's it. That's all the stuff that's not on your sheet, Sarah.
Okay, shall I go to the and finally?
Yes. Okay,
so and finally, Rugby League fans say they feel cut off from decisions both at their clubs and the game's two governing bodies, the RFL and Super League. A nationwide survey of more than 1,000 fans shows that many are scathing at how ignored they are in major decisions, including rebranding, changes of identity and name, and stadium relocations. The survey, conducted in June and July this year by Think Fan Engagement, which has conducted similar surveys across other sports, reveals that 87% of fans asked say they've not been asked about a significant change to the name, brand or badge design of the club they support. And 93% believe fans should be consulted and are not by the RFL or Super League on major issues within the sport.
Yeah, we had Kevin on an SLP short that you can still listen to in our back catalogue from Think Fan Engagement at the time the survey was being conducted. So I think a few SLP listeners will be in that more than 1,000 fans. It's probably the results, if you listen back to that episode, that Kev was expecting to get. If you want to know a bit more about it as well, he's recently been on the BBC Rugby League podcast as Kevin, so check that out and have a listen to that. I think the key thing, Sarah, is the sort of recommendations that this group come up with for how to get fans more engaged, and it's stuff like having a kind of an elected fan panel or board and having a member of that being elected to the club's board so that there's fan representation at boardroom level, and that sort of stuff. And I think these results kind of reinforce that sort of approach that Think Fan Engagement have, which is to sort of suggest that clubs need to be showing that fans can have a more direct say in things, even if there's things that fans can't decide, because ultimately, whilst the fans are the major stakeholders in any sports club, the real, ultimately in rugby league, the money mostly comes from the owners, doesn't it? And the broadcaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting stuff, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that as time goes on, as they do their follow-up to that. So hopefully people will get the chance to be involved more. Thanks to the EFC and Tom getting their fan views in for us. Shout out, of course, to BBC Sport Rugby League page, totalrl.com and loverugbyleague.com. They provide the news stories, they report it all, and we just comment on it. So thanks to those guys. That was probably the biggest news roundup we've had all year so far. Does it feel like a lot of the business that's normally done in the last few weeks of the season has been left to the end of the season this year in terms of contract renewals and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it does.
I'm glad it's not just me. Cool. Well, that's the news anyway. We're now going to talk about the Super League playoffs.
Do we have to?
Yeah. So it was week one of the Super League playoffs, and the first game was played on Thursday night. It was Wigan versus Leeds. It was a thrilling 0-0 at half-time and a not that much less thrilling 8-0 at full-time to the Leeds Rhinos, who came in and nilled Wigan on the home patch for the second time in close succession, really, in this season. Only 7,396 were there to watch it, which is dismal and disappointing. Robert Hicks was the referee. I'm not going to repeat the same words, but team stats were incomplete because Bodine Thompson doesn't exist. But both teams made a lot of meters in this game. Both teams, even without Bodine Thompson in the Leeds numbers, were over 1,500 meters. So I guess that means it was a flowing game, if not an exciting game. I don't know. Ash Hanley had a try and 216 of those meters. Harry Newman, who got the television man of the match, got 202 of those. Luke Briscoe 153 metres, and then Brad Dwyer 48 tackles, and 10 of which were marker tackles. For the losing side, Liam Farrell emphasised why his dream team spot is deserved, with 60 tackles, 17 of which were marker tackles and 100 metres as well. Morgan Smithies, who ended the season actually with a above 98% tackle success rate, 47 tackles, 13 marker tackles from him. Zach Hardacre, I think Hardacre might have ended the season with the most tackle bust actually, 10 tackle busts and 182 metres for him, certainly high ranking in terms of tackle bust per game anyway, and Willie Icer 162 metres, so you know, some big metre numbers, but guess what, none of them created fuck all. Fan views, Sarah.
Yeah, Carson said that wasn't nice to watch, but I don't think Wigan would have scored if they played another 80 minutes. Did Leeming have a bet on Marshall as any time try scorer? The 2 passes Reece Martin killed looked like it.
Yeah, it's probably not a massive stretch to say the 2 closest opportunities Wigan had to score it was Liam Marshall nearly intercepting something on his own 10-metre line twice that Reece Martin knocked on both times to prevent it from happening. Oh, dismal. Dr. Bob Phillips said, to misquote Oscar Wilde, to be nilled once at home is unfortunate. To be nilled twice seems like carelessness. I think it's just fucking shoddiness, Dr. Bob.
Callum Perk 99, in brackets, the Wigan drummer, and not the fat Wigan drummer, clearly. The worst Wigan team I've seen since supporting them. I'll happily take Lamb to the airport on one condition, that the rest of the board goes with him. I've never seen a more one-dimensional team, and don't even get me started on the 5th and last kicking game. That's been absolutely diabolical for at least 3 years. Oh well, a long trip back to Dewsbury and watch the mighty Bulldogs on Saturday against the Bulls. Well, that was a good game.
Yeah, he got his pick me up, didn't he, on the Saturday? Damning stuff, but no one can disagree with what he said. Cutthroat Jake said, not great, but we did enough. A double in nilling Wigan at home, and we'll probably lose to Catalans next week. Well, don't count your chickens. For now, however, the hat trick of winning from 5th is still on.
Fat Boy Rob says, the chaser was in front of the kicker for the try, but why bother with the video ref? No fucker else does. Pete Robert fucking Hicks.
I've watched it back because I wondered if it was Rob's hatred of Leeds that was like influencing this. James Donaldson was close to where the kick, you know, close to the line of the kick, but I don't think he was offside. So I can't say that he was offside. I don't know if you got any view on that.
To be honest, Joshua had been training, and then I had to pick Anna up from a friend's house, and having a cup of tea with my friend was more attractive than the idea of coming home and watching Wigan Leeds.
Do you know what? Fully vindicating your decision. I wish I was round there as well.
I think I watched the last 15 minutes, but even then I was like, come on, let's switch it off for the last bit.
Yeah, well, Jen K is another Wigan fan who sums up how I felt quite well here. As she says, this game was so similar to the same fixture a few weeks ago. Leeds were not that good, but they didn't need to be. I'm personally glad that Wigan have been put out of their misery any further into the playoffs, and we might have been seriously embarrassed. We might have seriously embarrassed ourselves. We have a great team on paper, but it's baffling why we have been so bad.
Yeah. Always in our shadow said, Dyer eventually gave up and watched the paint. Dyer, I eventually gave up and watched the paint dry. At least these two are good for heart conditions. No excitement.
He might get fan review of the week for that one. White Pie said 2 poor sides and Wigan could still be playing now Friday night and not have scored. They could still be playing now Lee Tuesday night and still not have scored. That said, I'm not convinced Leeds didn't knock on in the build up to their try, but we never deserved to win. Oh, I didn't go that far back on it. Who cares? It's been a poor season all round, and to be honest, I'm glad it's over, as this year has left me disillusioned with Rugby League. Still, no doubt I'll buy a season ticket when the letter arrives from Wigan, though. Anyway, all Catalans, aren't we? Yes, Catalans for a fortnight this time rather than just for a day, I think.
Yeah. Or 10 minutes as it was at Magic for us.
The best 10 minutes of my season, Sarah.
Yeah. Pop the Viking said, a poor game that was won by a Leeds team that showed a little bit more than Wigan.
Yeah. David Hunter said, Wigan can't even score a point. I would be ashamed if it were my team. I'm sure there was a tongue firmly in that cheek, and I'm sure there was one in the next one, Sarah, as well.
Neil Ormston said, haha, nilled at home in a playoff match. How embarrassing. Got to be pretty shit for that to happen. Great clipping by me too. Said Wigan would keep Leeds to single figures.
Yeah, and Tom Andrews gets the last word. He says, Leeds unspectacular, but Wigan dreadful as they have been for most of the back end of this season. Don't fancy Leeds against Saints next week. Wonder if Wigan's new coach can turn this around for next season with the outgoing players and the, so far, lack of quality coming in. I think the key thing is, if Bevan French comes back next year, then Wigan have something high quality and exciting. But otherwise, I don't know. But yeah, the highlight of this game for me was the game ending. Yeah, I guess some of the Leeds guys play well, Newman and Handley, but it was all kick return meters. But you know, they did well. Myler to an extent. When Wigan did start putting some high bombs up, he dropped both of them, one of them backwards, luckily for him. But I don't know why that tactic wasn't tried earlier. But last tackle plays. But even when some of their guys did play okay, they didn't have to come up against much. They didn't create anything themselves. There was no breaks in this match, unless Bodine Thompson made one and wasn't on the stats. But I don't remember him doing. I barely remember him being on the pitch. So there was no breaks in this game from either side. The try came from one of the many not great kicks, but this one just landed in a better place for the attack than the defence, unlike every other kick that was put in by both sides in the game. It was horrible stuff from both sides, really. And actually, if Jackson Hastings had done his job, which would have been to cover around the back when Jake Bibby ran 20 metres to try and catch a ball, I think Willie Isa was shielding the runner, so fair enough, he wasn't there to cover behind him. But Hastings, if he'd have covered behind him, done that job, there wouldn't have been any tries in this game. And both teams could have still been playing and not scored, I think, to be honest. Wigan offered absolutely nothing, and Leeds offered basically no more than that. The Super League website managed to put together 4 minutes of highlights of this game. It was all players returning kicks, running into heavy hits from defenders.
Wow.
Yeah, shocking. Normally I'd have loads more to say, even which way around and stuff, but I don't think either team's performance deserves much more. A team should not be in a position where their defence is so good that they concede one try to a kick, only concede 8 points at home in a playoff match against a team that finished lower than them in the table, and not win that game. It's absolutely appalling from Wigan's point of view. I suppose you've got to credit both defences to an extent, but certainly credit Leeds' defence, nilling Wigan again. But then it was Wigan they nilled. It wasn't a good side with the ball. It wasn't an attacking side. It was a Wigan side that have lost the capability of playing together in attack, and that's the biggest thing for next season, is that maybe they're going to have to come up with a way of playing together again that they've lost this season with individuals trying to take over all the time. So yeah, congratulations Leeds. They just about deserved to win, and Wigan certainly did not deserve to win.
Yeah. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on to a game that at least had some entertainment, even if it was just because there was a bar of soap involved.
Yep, so in the other playoff game, it finished Warrington 0, Hull KR 19, after being 6-0 to Hull KR at half-time. There were 6,252 people watching it, and Liam Moore was the referee. In terms of team stats, Warrington made an extra break, 3-2, and had a better team tackle success rate by a big 5.2%, but that was undone somewhat by 20 errors. They also conceded more penalties than the Robins, who made nearly 200 more metres than their hosts. In terms of individuals, for Rovers, Matty Staunton with 48 tackles, 11 marker tackles and 105 metres. Kane Lynette with 144 metres. Mikey Lewis with 1 try and 104 metres. In terms of the losers, Tom Lynham ran for 108 metres and Jack Hughes made 42 tackles.
Yep, Pop the Viking was first in. He said, "Well done,